My dearest brothers and sisters, we're about to talk about one of the scandals of the age in which we live, and I have in mind FTX, a crypto trading company that has just gone bust. Beginning on November 6th, it lost more than 80% of its value in a space of 72 hours. Something like $12 billion evaporated into thin air. And this led to a chain reaction where billions in value were lost by the world's largest cryptocurrencies. It turns out that FTX didn't keep reliable books or track its crypto dealings. It seems that the 20-something management used the company's money as a personal slush fund. In retrospect, FTX is seen as a huge Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is a form of fraud that lures investors in and pays profits to earlier investors with the funds from more recent investors. A Ponzi scheme can maintain the illusion of a sustainable business as long as new investors, as long as new suckers are coming in to contribute funds, and as long as most of the older investors do not demand full repayment and still believe in the non-existent assets that they are purported to own. At some point, however, Ponzi schemes inevitably tumble under their own weight. In the past, the value of cryptocurrencies kept rising by attracting an ever-growing range of investors and some big Wall Street money along with celebrity endorsements. But as I say, there's a chain reaction on hand, and the Ponzi scheme of crypto is about to tumble. We've been predicting this for a long time. It is a sad commentary. It is a sad commentary that we have this delirium, and it's driven by pure greed. It's the signature. FTX is the signature of the world in which we live. Of course, it's happened before. To find out the first manifestation, we have to go back to the Dutch tulip bubble of the 17th century. The tulip boom occurred when Dutch speculators caught a dose of irrational exuberance over tulip bulbs. They were then new to Europe. Speculators bought and sold bulbs, pushing up prices, while more people rushed into the market after hearing about all the money to be made. Over the course of 4 years in Holland, the price of tulips increased 200 times. At the peak of the bubble, a single tulip bulb could sell for 10 times a worker's annual wage. Then in just 1 month, the bubble burst and the price dropped to nearly nothing. Tulip mania was one of the first recorded speculative bubbles. There have been others. During the 1920s, the U.S. stock market underwent rapid expansion, reaching its peak in August 1929 after a period of wild speculation. By then, production had already declined and unemployment had risen, leaving stocks greatly in excess of their real value. Among the other causes of the inevitable market collapse were low wages, the proliferation of debt, a struggling agricultural sector, and an excess of bank loans that could not be liquidated. Stock prices began to decline in September, and then in October, the real decline began. Panic set in. On October 24th, a record 12 million shares were traded. On Monday, however, the storm broke anew and the market went into free fall. Billions of dollars were lost, wiping out thousands of investors, and stock tickers ran hours behind because the machinery could not handle the tremendous volume of trading. Overall, prices continued to drop. As the United States slumped into the Great Depression, and by 1932, stocks were worth only 20% of their value in the summer of 1929. In other words, they had declined by 4/5. Imagine that. The stock market crash of 1929 was not the sole cause of the Great Depression, but it did act to accelerate the global economic collapse, of which it was a symptom. By 1933, nearly half of America's banks had failed, and unemployment was approaching 15 million, or 30% of the workforce unemployed. Then there was the dot-com bubble. The arrival of scores of new internet companies to the stock market created a buzz in the late 90s that led to excessive speculation. Many new firms were able to win huge valuations as public companies, even though they generated very little or no profit whatsoever. The mania for technological stocks in the year 2000 had all the ingredients for a roller coaster ride from boom to bust. Glamorous sounding products that investors knew very little about, even though an economy firing on all cylinders. Selling at the top of the market triggered panic. Suddenly, the sources of funding for flashy companies that never made a penny dried up, hastening their decline and the inevitable crash. Then there was the subprime mortgage market in 2008-2009. Banks irresponsibly lent to U.S. households who couldn't really afford the mortgages they were being sold. The banks made massive returns by packaging the loans into bonds and then selling them. When the number of households falling into arrears on their mortgages began to rise, investors began to realize the scale of the bad assets pumped into financial markets. This triggered the collapse of the banking system in 2008. The U.S. government responded by using taxpayers' dollars to finance multi-trillion-dollar bailouts to the biggest Wall Street banks. So basically, the crypto crisis that's manifesting before our eyes is following a pattern that has occurred over and over again. Imagine, brothers and sisters, if the $16 billion that FTX lost overnight were devoted to making every schoolyard an edible schoolyard, to making every public park a permaculture landscape. Imagine Detroit, a garden for the human spirit. Imagine Hetch Hetchy, the Great Valley parallel to Yosemite, one of the most beautiful in the world, now under 300 feet of water. Paved paradise to put in a parking lot. Imagine if Hetch Hetchy were drained and permitted to regenerate. Imagine a type of agriculture beyond organic, wherein brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors have a chance to join hands with family farmers in growing the food that they eat. Imagine an America with where every single American was provided with absolutely free health care, naturopathic care of the highest level, where your health care had nothing to do whatsoever with your income, but was a human right. Imagine an America reborn and regenerated. Imagine an America well on the way to redemption and recreation. It's all there for you, brothers and sisters. You were the greatest generation. You saved the world from radical evil in the Second World War. You can regenerate these United States. You can recreate what is manifest before us and help us go forward towards a rebirth of freedom, as Abraham Lincoln prophesied. Thank you for permitting me to share a couple thoughts. Your comments and suggestions are so welcome indeed. Let us go forward.